We're now going to move to this exciting segment, a new era for Client Advisory Services, CAS, an acronym that I hope many of you are familiar with, and I'd like to bring up the panel for today's discussion, a group that is very, very close to both the practice area and the standards. So I've got Kim Blasco, Senior Director, who leads the CAS Professional Services here at CPA.com. Becky Munson, a partner who leads the outsourcing services at Eisner Advisory Group. And we've got Mike Westervelt, who's the chair of ARS, which is the Accounting and Review Services Committee, and he's also a principal at CLA. So welcome to all of you. We've got over 12,000 people here with us today. And one thing on the town hall that people are at, we had over 10,000 responses to that poll question. I know there's some, like always, there was a glitch or two out there, but we got 10,000 responses. We'll talk a little bit about that during open forum. But this topic here, this exciting evolution of the CAS area has gotten a lot of social media play over the past month or so. Here there's an Accounting Today article calling AICPA's clarification marks a sea change for CAS. So it's truly a new moment, and I want Kim and Becky, you to come in and just comment a little bit on this evolution of the CAS area from this traditional bookkeeping and write-up services, which probably can go back 30 plus years, to this middle area, which we call the emergence of client accounting services. That happened when we moved the accounting software to the cloud accounting. So really around 2008, 2009, 2010, that's when it got going. And then the ARCS committee rolled out a new standard to support this. And then over the last decade, it's evolved even further. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But Becky, I'll ask you first, just to kind of comment on this evolution of this very important practice area.
Yeah, I think, for us and for most firms out there, all we're focused on is just the best client service. And the evolution has really come out of that progression and wanting to make sure that we're giving our clients everything we can and everything that they need from us. And so market conditions have changed over the years. We're filling those gaps. Clients have just as much trouble hiring quality folks as we do. And, as that's continued to happen, firms are building expertise in industry verticals or maybe workflow or technology verticals. And they're putting that deep advisory consulting into the offerings that they give their clients on a regular basis. And we're just naturally moving into that advisory versus accounting era of CAS.
Kim?
Yeah, so you mentioned 30 years, which I'm pretty sure you took off of my bio because, I've been practicing. Prior to moving over to CPA.com, I had been in practice for about 30 plus years. So I think about this evolution and I'm like, I've lived through all of this, right? Our original practices were very much bookkeeping and write-up practices. A lot of times we were preparing financial statements to do tax returns. And we were maybe adjacent to the audit and financial statement services that were traditionally comp and reviews. Then we did jump into the emergence of what, we call the accounting services and the issuance of SARS 21, which allowed us to do that preparation of financial statements rather than having to be, strapped into like a compilation or a review service. And, that just kind of opened doors for us as well. And then we moved into where we are today, which is really, really exciting for the CAS space because CAS overall is focusing on client advisory services rather than client accounting services. And the issuance of SARS 27 really brings that to the modernized practice and is going to help folks inside of practice be able to really work with their clients in a different way. And it will hold up the way that they're working with their clients and allow them to really work on that advisory space rather than, focused on the financial statement. Now we can focus on it being a byproduct and really working with using those financial statements as a data source to work with clients on the advisory side. So all really exciting stuff.
Well, here, so this kind of is a very important kind of strategy slide that we leverage with thousands of firms, highlighting kind of this evolution in the spectrum of services that are offered now in this CAS area.
Yeah, and this kind of just backs up a lot of what we were talking about just even on the last slide. This is a maturity model for CAS, and it really talks about how we've moved from transactional services to business insights. And I would like to focus on the fact that we're still doing transactional services. We're just doing it as a data source to get to the business insights piece of it. So really focused on more of that controller and CFO service, and also thinking through, some of the services, you can look at the detail on the slide, but certainly some of the services still flow through, but we're really looking at the business insights, working on the dashboards, thinking through, some of the financial and non-financial stuff, and the SARS 27 helps us move up this spectrum of services. So then I'll jump in on the next slide as well and talk a little bit about, I'm gonna bring Mike into the conversation, because Mike was really, as the chair of the ARS committee, you were really involved with us as we moved through this on the task force side and bringing SARS 27 to reality for a lot of CAS practices. So Mike, maybe you can share with us a little bit about the technical breakdown of what SARS 27 is and what it brings to the CAS community.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for having me. When ARSC looked at our standards, we were looking to refine them to clarify and help practitioners identify how they support their clients. It was clear there was a inconsistency and I guess misunderstanding as to when a client was hired or engaged to prepare financial statements, specifically in the CAS practice, because as you articulated, CAS is something much broader than just financial statement prep, although we typically go back to the financial statements. So what we struggled with was providing resources. We created some really good tools to kind of try to help firms identify when they thought they might be preparing financials. But the more we looked at it, we kind of realized we don't want to be in a situation where we're dictating when a firm should prepare financial statements and what that means. We really think that falls in the level of what they believe they're engaged to do. And CAS is a good example of, I am doing a lot of different services. The client might be preparing the financials. I might be assisting in it. I might be involved in preparing them. We tried to identify if there was much difference between a consulting engagement and a preparation engagement. They both have due care. They both have considerations of identifying the work you're doing. Consulting doesn't specifically say you have to be engaged or have a contract with your client outlining what you're doing, but it strongly suggested that you kind of do that. So we thought it made sense to scope out preparation of financial statements if you're in a CAS type practice where you have a broader engagement, and you should really follow the scope of that engagement in the consulting. One of the concerns that might come up in that is, hey, is there a public interest issue there? And our feeling was, there isn't really a public interest issue. It really more falls to the CPA firm to consider how they engage with their client. It comes down to professional judgment. And it takes all the wasted time of trying to figure out what you're doing so you could better serve your client. We put out a exposure draft, extremely positive responses, some good feedback on what to consider, but effectively, it really scopes out the consideration of CAS practice from prep if you choose to, but you could still adopt preparation and use it on your engagement if you wanted to. And that also has an effective date of periods after December 15th of 2026, but you could early adopt it if you wish. So, you could really start this consideration currently.
Perfect. I'm going to come back. Oh, sorry.
Kim, I just got a couple of questions coming in that I want to ask to you and the team here for clarification. One, I'll tell you, there's a lot of excitement about firms looking to early adopt. So one of the questions that are coming in is, for a small firm that only does is not doing any audits and reviews, and now how does SARS 27 affect peer review? And that we didn't put those bullets on this slide here, but I think let's talk about two of the big ramifications related to if you are providing. And these CAS services, and you're not doing reviews and audits, where this stands related to peer review.
Great question. That's actually a good clarification for folks to consider. If I'm involved in a CAS type practice, consulting mainly, and I'm also helping prepare financials, or I am preparing financials, you can scope out with SARS 27 by scoping out your CAS practice from preparation. It's not subject to quality management, and it's not subject to peer review any longer. So you'd fall out of those considerations. Caveat there, I would say, is you still have to consider how you run your practice, and you'd probably want to have some controls around that process, but there's going to be no peer review oversight from that.
And Mike, the big thing is, I know there were some firms that decided to not continue as a licensed firm because of this requirement, and now there's absolutely no reason. They do have to follow the code of conduct and provide high quality service, but they will not have to have their CAS practice fall under their QM or be subject to peer review. So Kim?
Do you want me to ask a question?
No, yeah. Just continue on. That was.
Okay. I'm like, where are we at? All right. So, Mike, I'm going to come back to you. I have another quick question for you, and then I'll let you final out on. But I do want to go to Becky, because Becky, even though I don't think you've been practicing for 30 years, you've definitely been part of the evolution. So I think, and you've also been a huge advocate of what we've been working on and the results of SARS 27. You're part of our CAS Advisory Council. You are part of the task force as we worked through this as well. I'm going to ask you a loaded question, and I guess you can pick if you want to answer the whole thing. But what does this clarification mean to you and your firm? And how are you interpreting this? And has it changed the way that you guys are practicing today?
So it is a bit of a loaded question, but I think at its core, this change really codifies what we, and I think a lot of other firms, had already naturally evolved into when it comes to scaling and running a CAS practice. So some firms had already moved into the consulting standards. There was a disconnect in the way some firms were doing things versus others. And that was part of the reason the committee felt so strongly about pulling this forward. And, our teams provide such a broad scope of services that stretch really far beyond just a financial statement. Most of our clients are more interested in dashboards or the kind of regular monthly or ongoing meetings we're having with them to help them make business decisions and the value that broader relationship brings. And this change just allows us to innovate even more on how we provide service, the way we work with our clients, and it just removes that financial statement as the core central piece of the service and looks at the whole picture. And we're replacing that with ongoing regular insights to our clients. And that's what's most exciting about this. So this rule doesn't significantly change the way our team functions currently. And I assume there's a lot of firms who are in that same category. But I think for many firms, it's going to provide some flexibility and their ability to grow and innovate as they grow.
Yeah, well said, Becky. I mean, when we talk, Becky is part of our CAS Advisory Council. Really appreciate your leadership there. When you think about what is being provided, and Kim highlighted it well with the business insight, financial insights and business insight maturity model, it's so much more. So this service was born. It was born in the assurance area as part of bookkeeping and write-up. But now it's the financial statement's a byproduct. And I think this move to consulting services, we see a lot of firms now putting their CAS practice under their advisory area, really building synergies with the consulting area. So this is the highest growth area in the practice today. And I think with this change, we're going to really see it even flourish further.
Yeah, and Becky, I want to ask you one more question, just because you did mention that for you guys, you had kind of already moved into this model a bit already. But what would you say to the listeners that don't have as mature of a practice as you do from a CAS perspective? Do you have any good advice about now that they have the availability of the consulting standards to use in their practices?
Yeah, I think, the most important thing to remember here is you have options. So there's definitely a structure where a smaller practice or a certain kind of practice is going to want to stay with the setup they have under SARS 21, and they can definitely do that. And then for CAS practices that are looking to take a broader approach or innovate differently, this gives them the opportunity to move into the consulting standards and still have a professional framework, still have a professional structure that's so important to all of us being CPAs, and be able to deliver in that different way. And you can pick. You can set up under SARS 21, you can move to consulting, both are going to be fine. And so for folks who are struggling through this decision or maybe just starting the conversation, I think I said in the LinkedIn Live, really you're going to begin with your risk team and start to evaluate how this actually applies to your business. Who are your clients? What kind of work are you doing for them? And assess which framework's going to be best in the way that they deliver work. And there's no right or wrong answer there. I think every practice is different. Every team is different. And so all of those factors are going to help them determine what's best for them. And that really is outside of, practice maturity. Teams could be very mature and still decide SARS 21 is the right decision for them. And newer, smaller practices may want to innovate more. And I think both of those things are perfectly fine. And for a lot of practices, what I think we'll see is this will change over time. And they'll be able to move from one to the other as they sort of fully mature, and add that additional advisory expertise for their clients. So I think it's important to be practical and open-minded about how you're going to assess this, work with your risk teams and your internal groups, because that's always going to be an important consideration. But really just looking at your clients and understanding what best applies to the way you serve them is going to be the best start.
So, Kim, since we are kind of coming towards the end, we're gonna do these two slides and then go to open forum. But a lot of the questions coming in are about engagement letters, FAQs. So why don't you talk about what we have in development?
Perfect. Yeah, so we are working on developing some resources. First of all, we are coming out with an FAQ to clarify some of the SARS 27 standards, and that we should have out shortly, because that's been in the works for a while now, knowing that, or at least we had our fingers crossed that this was going to pass. So we're in pretty good shape to get that released pretty soon. The decision trees and role flow charts, I think, have already been modified on the AICPA side of the house. We do have a LinkedIn Live that Becky referenced, but we are also talking to the insurance companies about potential new insurance products, sample indemnification paragraphs, and even sample consulting engagement letters that firms will be able to use here in the future.
Great. And then there's been a lot of questions just kind of wanting to get a better understanding of what the CAS practice is all about. And Kim, you've got this close to 40-page benchmark survey that really kind of breaks it down in many different ways.
Yeah, the benchmark survey came out in December of 2024. We do it every other year, and it has a ton of really, really good information to use when you're transforming, when you're building, even if you want to compare where your practice is today with, some of the other top performers that are in the space. We also have tons of CAS thought leadership, white papers, webinars, blogs. We have a free CAS firm self-assessment that you can take to see kind of how your firm aligns, or at least what you think aligns with what's happening in the CAS space. And then we did come out with a CAS marketing toolkit, which was a collaboration with CPA.com and Association of Accounting Marketing, which is an amazing tool that is free and absolutely is something that CAS practices should download. We've already mentioned our CAS Advisory Council. They participate in so many things with us, looking at key trends. They're also a lot of the resources behind our thought leadership and the products that we develop there. And we have a whole professional services offering that has on-demand videos, live workshops, a guided coaching program, and also one-on-one consulting. And you can find all of that at CPA.com/CAS.